Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Sunday, May the 12th. Happy Mother's Day. In case we have any mothers around, if not, happy Mother's Day to your mothers. And I hope you're enjoying this Sunday. We are here to get started with topics of interest to our audience. So if you have any topics in mind, feel free to share in the chat window so we can discuss live. Let's see if we have any of our traditional friends here. If you are here, say hello in the chat window so we know we have our audience here ready to get started. There's some news for those who are in Brazil. You're probably following up on the disaster we are facing in Rio Grande do Sul. Rio Grande do Sul is the state in the extreme south of the country. We have unfortunately we have floodings all over the place. Like there are two main rivers in Rio Grande do Sul, and due to the extreme raining going on for a couple of weeks or several weeks, there's a lot of Brazilians displaced, like without access to their homes, and there is actually a large number of dead people as we speak, over 150. Dead people, and probably around 500,000 Brazilians who do not have a place to go. Okay, so really serious situation. There is a number of outlets for you guys to donate. If you want to donate to the to the victims of this disaster, and hopefully the authorities are going to take care of the victims, but unfortunately this is developing as we speak because the rain is continuing to displace more people, and hopefully it's going to eventually cease, and the situation is going to get better. All right, we have Ali. Welcome, Ali. We have Bill. Welcome, Bill. All right, let's see who else is it's here. Okay, Ali has a question. I have a couple of questions regarding real estate investment and your full service. All right, Ali, let us know the questions about the real estate investment. Real estate is really hot as we speak. There was a substantial increase in the purchasing power for U.S. dollar clients. There was a time in which the U.S. dollar was buying roughly like 4.7 or 4.5 reais, and right now it's buying usually over 5 reais per dollar. So not surprisingly, a lot of people who were just kind of lurking around, they are actually moving ahead with purchases. Okay, Ali, there is a lot of activity going on. We are at full capacity in terms of assisting with real estate transactions. However, we always have transactions leaving our pipeline. So usually we are able to accommodate a couple of new transactions per week, but a lot of activity, and all in all, it looks like a very good timing for buying real estate in Brazil. Mark Brooks, hi, question. Will be the tourist visa for Americans be officially canceled? Mark, so there are two competing ideologies or forces, like fighting over the visa for U.S. citizens. President Lula and the federal government, they are pushing the agenda for enforcing visas for U.S. citizens, as well Canadians and Australians, okay? And the Brazilian Congress is against, right? So President Lula has a traditional discourse against U.S. citizens in general, right? In terms of ideology, in terms of his career as a politician, he has been traditionally against the U.S. interests in Brazil. So under the so-called reciprocity, he says, you know what, if the U.S. Asks Brazilians to present a visa when entering the country, I think U.S. citizens should have a visa to enter Brazil. So that's Lula's position. But like the prior administration by President Bolsonaro said, this ideology stuff is just nonsense. We should be pro-business. And the reality is, we should make it easier for citizens from the United States, Canada, and Australia to enter the country because they are going to spend a lot of dollars, and that should be more important than ideology. Okay, so that was the position from the prior administration. So roughly in around 2016, President Bolsonaro said, let's get rid of the visa requirement. And that was in place since 2016, okay? Now, President Lula took over the federal government last year at the beginning of January. And of course, it takes a while for this type of change to be implemented, particularly after several years without a visa requirement. So that's what we see going on. And President Lula has tried already, to implement the visa requirement for 4 times. But the last time it was prior to last month, April the 10th. And then on April 9, the Brazilian Congress said, listen, if you enforce the visa, we're going to right away, we're going to approve a bill to invalidate your requirement, right? So President Lula, to avoid a political defeat, what he did was to postpone once again the visa requirement to April the 15th, 2025, right? Like next year. And given the state of things, it looks like, President Lula's political power is going to erode, not substantially, but I would say President Lula's power, let's say not is going to erode, but is not going to increase substantially over the course of the next year. So I would say best case scenario from President Lula's perspective is going to be this visa requirement being postponed over and over. And eventually, if another politician, takes charge of the federal government, they would most probably follow President Bolsonaro approach, which is more like common sense and it's more pro-business, meaning that no visa would be enforced. But, while we have President Lula in power, I don't think, they're going to let this go. They're going to keep trying. All right, I hope that helps, Mark. It's not like a simple answer, is more like this kind of, political dispute between President Lula and the Congress. Rony Dio, right, Rony? Boa tarde. Boa tarde to you as well, Rony. Good to see you over here. William Frost, thank you for showing up, William. Hi, Luciano. I really enjoyed the conversation with Mark Sant the other day. It was awesome. Good to know, William. Good to know. We're going to have Mark here, hopefully in the next month or so. Mark also spoke with me. We are planning to do one of the live streams in which Mark is like walking around and presenting Brazil on the fly, not like from an office like I do, but from the street. And I'm going to be happy to do that with Mark. But Mark will also participate in our live streams as well. Thank you for the feedback, William. it's good to know because then we can have more participations like that one. Mark Brooks, oh, my bad, boa tarde too. All right, boa tarde, Marky. No worries, whatever you want to know about Brazil, we're going to be here to discuss. There are no bad topics. Ellie, if I buy 2 flats, one in Rio de Janeiro and one in Salvador, in order to get a visa, what is the amount? 700 or 1 million? Ellie, if you have a purchase in Rio de Janeiro, our understanding is that you're going to be triggering the 1 million reais requirement, right? Another approach, another possibility is that you would think something, all right, maybe proportional, right? But the Brazilian immigration, they don't want to go too crazy about calculations. So instead of saying, all right, if you're buying a property in the Northeast, we're going to be considering the 700, and for the property in Rio, we're going to be considering the 1 million reais. They are not going to do like something proportional, trying to understand how much of the minimum requirement you are reaching for each transaction. They would most probably be buying, they would most probably be enforcing the higher amount, which is 1 million reais. Okay, Ellie, so they don't want to go too crazy in terms of calculations. We need to make it easier for them to approve your visa. So our recommendation is, if you're buying in both markets, work with the 1 million reais target. Mark Brooks, wow, great information. Thank you so much. You're very welcome, Mark. We like to give you like a little bit more than yes or no. We like to give you some background information so you can understand the reasoning behind the things that we talk about here at the live stream. William Frost, great news. Looking forward to it. Good to know, William. Ali, okay, thanks. You're welcome, Ali. Any other information about the real estate investment visa? I'm happy to share over here. One interesting thing about the real estate investment visa is that it is actually first reviewed inside of Brazil, and then for most applicants, there's going to be a second stage in their countries of residence. So when you buy a property and you get the process started in Brazil, as it is always the case, it's always started in Brazil, it means that it is a very good choice for people from countries for which the Brazilian immigration will traditionally decline a visa. We have many consultations with people living in the UAE, and most of the time people are not actually from the UAE, right? Like people are born in other countries, then eventually they relocate to the United Arab Emirates, and they make a lot of money, and then eventually they want to come to Brazil. But unfortunately, whenever they are from certain nationalities, right, like Pakistan, Tajikistan, and other countries for which particularly people are going to want to immigrate to Brazil, the Brazilian immigration will usually deny the applications. Okay, so let's say if you're from the Pakistan but you're based in the UAE and you're making a lot of money and you apply for a digital nomad visa, even if you're showing a lot of money, traditionally, we see the Brazilian embassy in Abu Dhabi declining such applications. And whatever you come up with a reasoning, or even if you have a very solid application, chances are you're going to be denied, right? So for those applicants to purchase real estate in Brazil, it's going to be a really good path, because again, the process starts in Brazil. And then it's just like the Brazilian immigration. They are going to be looking at the real estate transaction. Unless they see a problem with, criminal records, most probably than not, they are going to give you a thumbs up for the application. And then when the paperwork is sent to the UAE, more specifically at the Abu Dhabi embassy, this paperwork is going to come with an approval, right? True, is it still possible for the Brazilian embassy in Abu Dhabi to decline your visa? But that would be very difficult, particularly if the Brazilian immigration in Brazil already gave you a thumbs up for your application. So for most people from such countries, again, Pakistan, India, Nigeria, and some other countries that traditionally are going to be facing a difficult time to get a visa. The real estate, of course, like you need to have the money, which is not for everyone. But if you do have the money to buy real estate, this is a way to overcome this type of, posture from the Brazilian immigration, particularly at the consulates and embassies, of denying these visas, right? Like, I mean, they're going to deny most of the applications, okay? So hopefully this information is going to be good for some of you. Ellie, can you describe how your full service works? How do you help finding the property? Or do you enter only when the buyer finds a specific real estate? Ellie, like, I would recommend you to get in touch with us because then it's going to sound almost like I am doing like advertisement for our services, and I don't want to do that in our live stream. But I just shared our email address. You can send an email, and we can actually send you all the steps that we do assist with the real estate transaction. But in terms of, like if you need to find a property by yourself, or if you need, or if we can help you, yes, we can help you find the property, particularly for markets in which we have been working consistently, such as Rio de Janeiro, Florianópolis, São Paulo, Fortaleza, and Salvador, Bahia. These are markets we always have at least one or two real estate transactions going on. So we do have a communication with different real estate agencies. And when you hire our service, we make those referrals available, right? Like, we don't like to make those referrals available across the board. Just because, like, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes we in the past we would share a specific referral. People would go by themselves and try to buy something. Things would not work, and guess what? They would blame everyone, right? They wouldn't secure a service to assist with the transaction, and then they would say, well, like you did recommend this real estate, but I didn't like the experience. So at the end of the day, like, we didn't make any money. We gave a recommendation, freely for you to, have a start point. And at the end of the day, like, the person would be still like mad at us, right? Like, so we now avoid to do those type of blanket recommendations. We first make sure that the client is working with us. So, the client is going to have some level of professional support from a legal perspective, and only then we're going to make those referrals available, because then we have a closer participation in the transaction. And when we see something that is not working as it should, we can intervene, we can, make changes, or we can, drive the transaction in a way that the client is going to actually get what they are trying to get, and avoid those type of bad experiences that we saw in the past. All right, Ellie, I hope that helps. But again, just send us an email. We can send you like every single aspect of the transaction we would be assisting with. And you can also consider like a consultation. In the consultation, like, we have our full attention on your goals, on your specifics, and every transaction and every situation is different. So when we have a consultation, we can really give you like the information that's going to help you decide if you're buying real estate in Brazil is a good idea for you or not, right? Buying real estate in Brazil is not for everyone, right? Buying real estate in Brazil is for some people and not for everyone, even from an investment perspective, like particularly in the northeast of Brazil, when foreign citizens are traveling and they are visiting, the beaches, like they're going to eventually get in touch with developers, and developers are going to sell Brazil real estate as the best deal in the world, and it is not. There are many better investments than investing in Brazil, particularly if you're not in Brazil. You're going to be managing, or you're going to be dealing with your property from abroad. There are challenges for sure, and there are better rates of return. Buying a plot of land by the beach, sometimes people say, listen, in 10 years, this thing is going to be worth double of what you're paying. But unfortunately, most of the time, you're going to be overpaying just because you are a foreign citizen, okay? Particularly if you're just buying by yourself, you don't have advisory, you're going to be paying way more than whatever land is worth. And guess what? 10 years down the road, most probably than not, this thing is going to be worth the same thing that you paid, maybe best case scenario. And I've seen people buying plots of land and trying to sell even at a loss several years down the road, and they are still unable to find a buyer, okay? So I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm not here to sell real estate. I'm here to tell you the truth. So if you decided to follow that route, you are fully informed about the reality of real estate in Brazil. Mark Brooks, hi, great information. I have another question. Maybe this is a little bit out of your scope of practice, but I have had several Brazilian girlfriends. Both were teachers and made the same amount of money, but one was denied and the other was granted a visa. The girl that was denied was told that she didn't make enough per year. She made about $500 per month. Is there a formula? I'm going to assume, Mark, that you're talking about immigration from Brazil to the United States, right? Like you didn't specifically said so, but I'm going to assume this is what you are mentioning, because if they are Brazilians, they are not looking for a visa into Brazil. And if you're not mentioning any country because of our client base and audience, I would assume you're talking about the United States, right? And I'm very familiar with the consulates, particularly in São Paulo, the U.S. consulate in São Paulo and the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro. They are huge consulates. They are like almost like a city. The one in São Paulo, it covers, I would guess, 10 city blocks. It's huge. It's something extraordinary. In the one in the Rio de Janeiro, the same thing is like a whole building, a big building just occupied by the U.S. consulate, right? So these are massive presences from the United States in Brazilian soil, and they are there to actually handle both needs from Brazilian citizens trying to go to the United States, as well as U.S. citizens with interests in Brazil. So they're going to handle both publics. For Brazilians applying for visas abroad, nowadays the waiting time exceeds well over a year. And the reality is, like, if there was no visa requirement, right? Like, let's say if we were going to apply, visa requirements in Brazil, the way that President Lula thinks, there wouldn't be a visa requirement. And guess what? I would assume maybe 10 million people or 20 million Brazilians, they would want to move to the United States right away. Even if the visa was just the tourist visa, they would say, I don't care. I'm going to fly as a tourist and I'm going to stay in the United States for good. Okay, maybe 10 or 20 million people. That's just the reality, right? Like there is such a discrepancy in terms of how much money you can make in Brazil and how much money you can make in the U.S. And life in Brazil is kind of tough, right? Like Brazil is a pretty rich country, at least from a GDP, a gross domestic product perspective, but unfortunately, there is a lot of corruption, particularly at the different government levels. So although Brazil is a very rich country, right? Like, I mean, it has been, positioned between the 8th and 12th largest economies in the world. Like, I mean, we are bigger than, I would say, probably most European countries and many countries. I mean, even like Portugal, right? Like Brazil was colonized by Portugal, and we make so much more money than Portugal, and maybe probably all the other Portuguese speaking countries combined in the world. Brazil is a bigger country, right, from goods production. But this money, unfortunately, it does not go to the population. There is a lot of money being wasted in the public administration. Public administration has certain rules that are going to pay crazily well for public government employees, but people who are not like a public, a public government employee, they are not going to make a lot of money. There is a lot of informal work in Brazil, but the bottom line is, like, I mean, if you open the gates to the United States, probably, at least 20 million people would buy an air ticket overnight to start living in the United States. So now that I gave you some context, let's talk about the examples you gave me. So two applicants, they make the same amount of money, and the U.S. consulate is going to deny a visa for one of the applicants, but is not going to deny for the other, right? So yes, there is some bearing in terms of how much money the person is making. In theory, the U.S. consulate is going to ask Brazilians to show up with documents that are going to explain different factors about their lives, such as how much money they make. But not only that, they want to see that the Brazilian applicant has something that is going to make them less probable to immigrate to the United States. So it's not just like the 500 US dollars that they're making a month, but they're also going to look at which stage of their journeys, of their life journeys they are in. So let's assume one of your girlfriends, they were like studying, like they were pursuing a degree, a college degree, and the other one was not. So whoever is studying for a degree has more reason to stay in Brazil than the other one. Okay, so that's another factor. Let's say real estate property. That's another thing that the U.S. consulate could consider. If the person says, "Listen, I have a paid-off car. I have here an apartment that you can see in the title. I own this apartment outright, right? It's not financed." That's another thing that the U.S. consulate could take into consideration, to kind of assess if the person is actually just traveling for vacation, or if they are actually saying they're going to go for vacation and end up staying in the United States. And even like, nowadays, the U.S. consulates, we have heard about them checking like social media, okay, to see first if the profile of this person is compatible with someone who's going to be traveling to the United States just for vacation, or if this person is going to be traveling to stay there for good. And I can give an example. Let's say if the person's social media pictures show this person, like in kind of fancy vacations in Brazil, or maybe fancy vacations in Europe, and driving an upscale car in Brazil. This person at the U.S. consulate, they're going to say, well, this person looks like someone who would visit the U.S. and would actually return to Brazil, right? And on the other side, if they take a look at the social media pictures, and this person can be clearly understood as someone from a lower social extract in Brazil, they would say, you know what, I can see this person's life, and if they had an opportunity to arrive in the United States, I can tell this person is not going to go back to Brazil. Okay, so there are factors that are going to go, beyond like the income, and I hope that helps with the understanding, Mark, of why similar people, at least from a first perspective, are going to have different outcomes when applying for a U.S. visa in Brazil. Okay, Ali, just a clarification. Is it possible to buy properties in smaller towns like Praia do Pipa? Yes, absolutely. So it could be Praia do Pipa, it could be any small town in Rio Grande do Norte, closer to Natal. It could be any small town in Ceará. Okay, these two states, they kind of have the same kind of look and feel, and you can buy in the small towns. The requirement that we are talking about here is like rural versus urban, and a good thing for foreign citizens is that towns, they are going to try to frame every property they can as a urban property, because then when you pay taxes, these taxes, they are going to come to the city. If the property is considered as a rural property, the taxes are going to go to the federal government. So not surprisingly, the cities are going to go out of their way to make sure properties are seen as urban properties instead of rural properties. So even small towns, they are going to qualify for the real estate investment visa. This said, particularly in Rio Grande do Norte, when you say Praia do Pipa and Ceará, a problem you're going to see is that, there's going to be a bunch of properties without the legal deed. And if you don't have a legal deed, for sure, this property is not going to qualify for the real estate investment visa. Another problem that we see very often in smaller towns like Praia do Pipa, and in Ceará, or the whole Northeast for the matter, is that sometimes you're going to find a really nice beach house, and then you're going to ask about the legal deed, and the seller is going to say, yes, thumbs up, here's the legal deed, and they do have the legal deed, but then you're going to find some type of issue, either with the chain of ownership, or with the recording of the construction on the legal deed. That's super common. So the person is going to say, well, this was recorded. It was recorded for on a brother of mine's name, but it's not on my name. And now my brother is deceased, but the heirs decided that I can keep the property, and there is always some type of story. So in addition to being urban, first thing, like the deed needs to be up to date with the chain of ownership, meaning that you're going to be buying from the person who shows as a legal owner on the title. And second, like if there is just the land recorded on the deed, this is not going to be sufficient because the real estate investment visa requires a construction. You cannot buy bare land. So if there is this such, a really nice beach house in Praia do Pipa, but the deed, only shows the land, then there would be at least a need for this title or for this deed to be corrected, and only then you should be buying the property. I hope that helps. All right. So Mark Brooks, sorry, tourist visa, exactly. That's what we discussed. They went to the Recife location. Yes, not São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, but they're following the same approach for sure, Mark. So I hope those tips do help with your planning, with your companions whenever they want to visit you in the United States. Kate Well, e aí, amigo, tudo jóia? Good to see you, Kate. You here in every single live stream. I really appreciate the support. Let's see your question. How does immigration define North versus South? 700 versus 1 million reais. For example, Tocantins is in the north on some maps. Are Centro-Oeste states north or south for real estate visa? That's a good question, Kate. So, just like you said, right? Centro-Oeste states, they are not considered north. So there are some geographical, I'm not sure if they define as geographical, more probably a political subdivision of Brazil. And there are some maps that are going to show you exactly which states are going to be in the north and the northeast. Let me see if I can, by luck, find one of these maps. Let me see. All right, there is, yes, there is one here for the northeast. So I'm going to share. Let me see if I can share. Yes, now I need to try to share the URL. Yep, so I'm going to share the URL for the northeast states. Okay, so northeast states are those that you see in this link, nothing else. All right. Now let me see if I can get one for the north. And then we're going to be good. All right. Okay, northeast. And then I'm trying to find one for the north. All right. Got one here for the north. And then I'm sharing here as well. So now you have both maps, and you're going to see that the one for the north, it does cover Rondônia, which is kind of almost like center-west, like you're saying, like centro-west, center-west. Rondônia is going to be the only state that's not really up north that's included. Okay, there is another one, Tocantins, which is kind of not exactly in the north, but they are kind of piggybacking, right? But the complete list of north states are Acre, Rondônia, Amazonas, which sounds just like Amazon, Roraima, Pará, Amapá, and Tocantins. But just copy those two links, and then you're going to know exactly which states, right, for north and northeast are the states that are going to qualify for the 700,000, okay? So Tocantins is in the north on some maps. Are Centro-Oeste states north or south for real estate? Tocantins is north, all right? You don't have an issue with Tocantins. Okay, all right. William Frost, great that you are honest about Brazil and its economy. It is an amazing country, but I have heard about the corruption and bureaucracy. Good that you're not sugarcoating the reality. I appreciate it. Yeah, William, thank you for welcoming my, openness. Sometimes, like people could say, well, are you bad-mouthing your country? No, I'm just like highlighting the downsides. Just like everything else in life, there are upsides and there are downsides. And guess what? I know that Brazilian has enough upsides that people are going to come here no matter what. I don't need to oversell Brazil. Brazil sells by itself. They don't need me to tell good things about Brazil. People are going to come anyhow. So this said, I would rather, give you the downsides up front, because then once you come to Brazil, you're going to know exactly what you're gonna find here. There is no need for sugarcoating. Brazil sells by itself. Wassen Choduri. Wassen, welcome. Boa tarde, meu amigo. Como está? Wassen is already practicing his Portuguese, so when it's time for Wassen citizenship application, the Portuguese language is not going to be a tough requirement. I'm just joking, but Wassen, feel free to participate here in Portuguese, in English. Good to see you. Mark Brooks says, okay, great information. Thank you so much. You're pretty welcome, Mark. DB Hodler, DB, welcome. Good to see you back. Are things getting better in Rio Grande do Sul? Such a terrible catastrophe. Yes, DB, unfortunately, it's not getting better. The rain continues, and all we can do is to pray and send money, right? Like, so we are, our office is donating. We just made a donation for $1,000. I know it's not much, but if everyone would donate some money to the state, I think, things could be much better. But there are, Brazilians and businesses across the world donating to Rio Grande do Sul. Okay, so for those who are joining only now, I said at the beginning of our live stream, Rio Grande do Sul is like the southern, like at the extreme south of Brazil, and they are going through, a catastrophic time. There are basically like two main rivers crossing the state, and they are overflowing because of the non-stop rain, and there are over 500,000 people displaced because of the rain. Okay, and it's really sad. It's really tough to fight against nature, but just like we were talking about corruption and other things, the state has failed, and particularly the federal government, right? Because it wouldn't be fair to put all of this expectation on the state level. I would say is more something that the federal government should have done in terms of anticipate and do like work that would avoid such problems. But they are not doing like basic maintenance on those river flooring, right? Like they need to do like cleaning. They need to make sure that the river can, flow its course over a certain determined path. But the Brazilian government, the federal government, is not doing enough, and the state government by itself, like they are kind of like California. They are like, they have a lot of debt. They don't have a financial breadth enough to take care of the activities required to avoid this type of problems. And again, what we can do is like to pray that the rain is going to stop. Donate money, right? So more than praying, we are donating money, and I would recommend for any of you who could donate some money to the state, particularly to the non-government or governmental organizations. Like you could do that, knowing that this money is going to get to those like 500,000 plus people who do not have a place to go as we speak, because like their homes were devastated by the flooding, by the rain, by like everything that's going on in Rio Grande do Sul. Thank you very much for calling attention to this point, DB. It's good to know that foreign citizens, they are aware of what's going on in Rio Grande do Sul, and it couldn't be worse, unfortunately. Ronnie Dio, my fiancée, got denied a tourist visa to the U.S. They said she had not enough reason to return, even though she owned a condo and has children. I called the embassy and let them know. I asked her to visit. Yes, Ronnie, like I said, it's not just, it does sound like your fiancé had like, some reasonable reasons to come back to Brazil. Like she has real estate property, she has children, but they, and of course they don't disclose everything that they are going to take into consideration. Sometimes just like the behavior of the applicant, if the person is nervous or, something that they could say is a telling sign. They could take that into consideration, and there is not much you can do, right? Like, I mean, the visa, like the possibility of a Brazilian visiting the U.S. is not a right, is a privilege, and just like the legal concept of a privilege, you don't have like a legal basis, for instance, to sue the United States, right? It's ultimately with the immigration officer, and if they say no, all you can do is just wait and reapply a few years down the road, particularly if you play nicely, right? Like if you don't leave it the consulate, like swearing, calling names, and yelling. You come back a couple of years down the road. You say, "Listen, I applied a couple of years ago. I was denied. Like I'm just coming here. I brought more documents to show that I have a pretty stable life here in Brazil. I have real estate. I have children, and I have here all the elements showing that I'm just traveling to stay for a short period of time." I saw more than once people being able to get a visa after being denied a visa a few years ago. So maybe the message here is for them, to do not give up and try again a couple of years down the road. Ellie says, "Thank you very much, Luciano. One more question about real estate investment. Assuming I find the property and everything is fine, how long the whole process would take? 60 days, 90 days? We usually like to work with 90 days. What we tell the realtors and the seller is like this: listen, let's provision 90 days in the contract, because this is a very special type of acquisition. The buyer is buying the property for the purpose of getting residency in Brazil. So there are many specifics, and 90 days are going to allow us to handle those specifics without much worry. But if we rush, maybe 60 days is not going to be enough, and if it is not enough, that's going to be really bad for our clients, and therefore we either going to close in 90 days or there is no deal. Okay, most of the time we are able to close under 60 days, but we still ask for 90 days to have all the time we need to make this work for your long-term residency, Ali. Okay, I hope this makes sense. We have a message from Noel. Welcome, Noel. How did you learn English? It's very good. Thank you so much for the comment, Noel. So I actually started as a business consultant when I was a teenager. I did work for international consulting firms such as KPMG. So actually at the beginning I wasn't working for KPMG, but I did work for local Brazilian consultancies. And then I ended up working for KPMG. Most of the projects, they were like international projects. So they gave me enough exposure, like to learn, like the actual spoken English, right? Not the English that you work at the language school in Brazil. So that's how I started. And then I did have, like long periods of time actually living in the United States. And that's how I let's say, I got the opportunity to polish my English. But thank you so much for the comment. DB Hodler, I think Mark Saint has some donation links in a video he produced. All right, so let me check here. Mark Saint live channel. Let's take a look. Saint Mark. Mark Saint channel. Yes, his channel name is Brazil Unsubtitled. All right, Channel Inc. Yes, I know. Like he told me he was going to record something about the donation. I'm gonna share. For those who do not know, Mark Saint. I think it would be difficult for you guys not to know about him. I'm sharing. I'm gonna share his channel link, so you guys can take a look and see if there is something that you could use for donation, right? Okay, just getting the link as we speak, and then I'm gonna share with you. Almost there. Yeah, I got the link. So this is Mark Saint channel. I just shared his channel link. Let's see if I can find any videos that, yes, there is a video here. He did a video about the flooding in the south of Brazil. Rio Grande do Sul is underwater. That was actually 4 days ago. I'm copying the link, and you can watch his video about the whole situation in Rio Grande do Sul. All right, and if he does have links over there, I know that Mark is so passionate about Brazil. I would assume he did his homework in terms of vetting the donation channels. But there you go. There are two links. There is one link for Mark's channel, and there is a second link for his specific video about Rio Grande do Sul. And you could probably find something over there for the donation. Okay, but there was a good sharing. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Mark Brooks, I agree with William. I really appreciate your honesty. It's extremely helpful. I appreciate your participation, Mark, and Williams as well. Mark has a question. This is just a general question, but I have been traveling to Brazil for about 3 years now. Right, that's good, Mark. That's good for you, and it's so interesting to see people coming to Brazil often, right? And this is certainly a sign that you are finding what you're looking for in Brazil. We did record a live stream with another U.S. citizen, like last Wednesday. His name is Jerry Nardini, and we spent probably like an hour in this live stream, and he was explaining why he's coming to Brazil for over 20 years, and he decided to retire in Brazil. And I did ask like many questions, and one of the questions which is very interesting to me is like, why did you choose, for instance, Brazil over Portugal, right? Portugal makes easier for people to retire in Portugal. Portugal is recognized as a safer place than Brazil. So it was more like, like to try to uncover what would make someone to prefer Brazil over Europe, right? And Jerry, he was very fast in saying, "Listen, I don't have any desire to retire in Europe." And in my reading, he was saying that Europe is not, of course, the same as the United States, but people don't have like the same type of calor humano. They are not as warm as Brazilians are, not only towards like foreign citizens, but among ourselves. And he was sharing some very specific, experiences, like when you enter an elevator and people will smile and they are so genuine about being happy. It could be like at the end of the day, it could be at the beginning of the day. Brazilians are always happy about living, right? Like it does not matter if you're not making a lot of money. It does not matter if you have a debt. What matters is that you're living life, you have friends, you are connecting to other human beings. So there was I in my reading again, and I would tell you to actually watch the live stream with Jerry Nardini, because then you're gonna have your own reading of his words. Like, he was very vocal, like he did share. I would say, out of this full hour, I probably spoke for, I don't know, 5 minutes or 7 minutes. And the remaining was Jerry Nardini explaining why he kept coming back to Brazil for 20 years. And at the end of the 20 years, when he did have the opportunity, he jumped in and chose Brazil for retirement. Okay, so I completely understand, like you coming for 3 years. It's something that we see a lot among our clients. All right, Bill, coming to the rescue. If you appreciate the information Luciano is providing here, please hit the like, thumbs up button. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, if you guys can, like the live stream, that's gonna make easier for other people to find our live stream, and actually to find the recording later on. And I can see it's working. It was 7 likes. Now I see 8 likes. So I appreciate you guys, liking the live. 9 likes now, and it's growing up. It's adding up. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Bill, for your looking after our channel. William Frost, are there still a lot of Argentinians in Brazil? I remember meeting a lot of them in Rio and Santa Catarina a few years ago, as the economy was having a lot of problems in Argentina. William, yes, there are lots of people from South America in general, and Argentina is such an interesting place. I mean, from a cultural perspective, it is a very rich country. Argentinians, like, they have a very unique complexion. They look different than us Brazilians. Usually, they're gonna look more like Europeans than we do, and they are proud of their history. They are proud of their country. But unfortunately, their governments have failed the people from Argentina. And I remember I went to Argentina in 2023 when I was getting married, okay, like over 20 years ago. And it was a mess. Like, their economy was a mess. They were destroying banks. Like, you could see banks like with their windows, with their windows like broken, and some places they would even, I don't know, they would even set on fire. It was something really crazy, and that was in 2003, so 21 years ago. So we are talking about, economy problems in Argentina 20 years later, and there's still the same problems. Sometimes they have, really left-wing governments. They don't end up doing what they promise, and then Argentina is going to turn all the way to the extreme right, like right now. And not surprisingly, it's going to be difficult for such transition, like extreme governments. I wish there was something more like, in the middle, that instead of being so attached to ideology, they would be attached to the people and to the economy, or, doing things that are going to actually fly. But the reality is, if Brazil has some bad times, it looks like Argentina has much worse times in terms of economy, in terms of, sharing its richness with their people. So yes, Argentinians, they are going to come to Brazil in droves, not only for, spending vacation time in Brazil, but they're also going to come to live in Brazil, because Of course, like in terms of GDP, Brazil has a much higher GDP than Argentina. So there is much more money to be made in Brazil than there is in Argentina. And even though sometimes Argentinians, they're not really nice to Brazilians, sometimes there is this kind of offensive comments, like they say Brazilians are like macaquitos, like little monkeys. I'm not sure, maybe because of our, more indigenous look, but sometimes, some Argentinians, they're going to be really cruel when it comes like to Brazil. But, aside of that, the reality is like Argentinians, they are welcome in Brazil. And whenever I was in Argentina, I felt welcome. Nobody was disrespectful. So, maybe this is more like when we play soccer against each other, like people are going to call each other names. But the reality is like we are, close allies from a geographical and political perspective. But yes, I mean, there are lots of Argentinians, and not only Argentinians, Uruguayans from Uruguay, people from Paraguay, and, like Venezuelans, they've been coming in hundreds of thousands to Brazil. Okay, and that started under President Bolsonaro. President Bolsonaro was very fast to say, listen, open borders to people from Venezuela. You can come here and we're going to take care of you. Okay, so people from Venezuela, hundreds of thousands of people coming from Venezuela to Brazil for a better future. All right, Moses Mibagu, welcome, Moses. Good to see you here. Hello, sir. Good afternoon. Thanks for another opportunity to clear out doubts about investing in Brazil. I would like to know how long it will take to obtain residency after buying a property. Good question, Moses. So to buy the property, just like I answered before in this live, usually 90 days to buy the property, and between applying for the residency and actually getting the residency, usually 3 to 4 months. Okay, so altogether a total of 6 to 7 months after you get started in this journey, Moses. Guys, we are gonna be heading to the end of our live stream. I'm gonna get a couple of questions, and then we're gonna end this live stream. But don't forget, we have another live stream on Wednesday. Okay, this live stream is not up in our channel, but we're gonna set up right after this live stream. So if you go to our channel and you click on notify me, you make sure you're not gonna miss our Wednesday live stream. We don't have any guests for Wednesday, unfortunately, but the upside is that we are able to tackle the topics of your interest, just like we are doing today. Mark Brooks, I've noticed that most Brazilians view Americans as rich, regardless if they are truly rich. Sometimes this perception can create awkward situations, particularly because Brazilians have a lot of pride. Yes, Mark, I don't know. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, there are lots of people in the United States who are living, out of, I don't know, like food stamps, or, they are in a really bad place financially. But the reality is, like, when you compare, like, the financials from Brazil and the United States, there is a huge gap, right? Like, between the two countries. Just to give an example, like, like the minimum wage in Brazil is roughly like 1,500 reais, which is roughly like $300 a month, right? So if you think about California, I don't know, California should have, I would guess, a minimum wage of $18 to $20 a month, right? Like California. And then you think about 40 hours a week, we're talking about $800 a week. And in Brazil, minimum wage is $300 a month. So there is a huge, a gap between these two countries. But I agree, like, I mean, ideally people would not, have a single you would not generalize, in terms of U.S. citizens being all rich. But yes, there is such expectation. During my live stream with Mark Saint, we did address a lot, particularly for those who end up in a romantic relationship with Brazilians. We did discuss about some of the potential outcomes of such perception, and we spoke that Brazilians in general, they're not super fast actually to ask money or to accept gifts of a lot of value, and if you see something different, like you could like try to understand why someone is expecting money from you or is asking money from you. Another thing we see every now and then here at the firm is like scams. People who are not really, even in Brazil, like people from Nigeria, right? And unfortunately, Nigeria is still leading like those type of, love letters or, fake internet relationship scams in which they start to pretend they are like a Brazilian in love with a U.S. citizen. They start to ask for money, and eventually the U.S. citizen is going to realize it's a scam. But usually that's not even in Brazil. But the bottom line here is like for you to take into consideration, this gap in terms of financials, and take that into perspective whenever you are in Brazil. And that's challenge indeed, how to balance, right, like your expenses in Brazil, so you don't come across weird, right? Like, oh, I have a bunch of money, or Brazilians are, could get offended, like if you're trying to buy or pay everything. So good point for U.S. citizens to consider when coming to Brazil. So I see we have more questions. I will apologize for not being able to answer. I will ask you for a favor. Please save your messages for Wednesday, and I will be pleased to answer all your questions and address topics of your interest. I appreciate. I see we have many viewers in our live stream. After Bill, remind us about the likes. The number of likes increased. Thank you for the likes. And I hope to see you guys again on Wednesday. And you guys have a blessed rest of your day.